I worked 2 jobs for 8 years. That is the fact I return to when I try to explain what happened. Not the divorce, though the divorce was significant. Not the folder, though the folder was everything. The fact I return to is 8 years. 2 jobs, every tuition payment, every bill, every grocery receipt filed in a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk in the apartment we shared. The apartment I paid for, in the city we had chosen together because the medical school he had been accepted to was there, and I had said yes, without hesitation, because he was my husband, and that was what the word meant. 8 years. I want that number to sit for a moment before anything else. My name is Anna Reeves. I am 37 years old. I work in financial administration, which means I understand numbers and documentation and the particular discipline of keeping records that are accurate and complete and retrievable when you need them. I have always been precise about these things. My mother used to say I was born organized. I took it as a compliment because I understood early that organization is not a personality trait. It is a form of protection. I did not know how much protection I would need. My husband's name is Thomas. He is 2 years older than me. We met when I was 22 and he was 24, at a mutual friend's dinner, and he was the kind of person who made a room feel more interesting just by being in it. He talked about medicine the way some people talk about a calling, with a seriousness and an urgency that felt genuine and that I found compelling. He had applied to medical school 3 times before we met and had not been accepted, and he was applying again. I said I believed in him. I meant it. He was accepted the following year. We sat at the kitchen table the evening the letter came, and he read it twice, and then he put it down and looked at me, and his face was doing something I had not seen it do before, something open and unguarded and very young. He said, "I could not have done this without you." I said, "You haven't done it yet. Let's get you through it first." He laughed. We got married 3 months before he started. The financial reality of medical school is something that people outside it do not fully understand until they are inside it. The tuition alone was significant. The books, the equipment, the fees, the costs that accumulate around the central cost like smaller stones around a larger one. Thomas had some savings. They lasted 14 months. After that, it was me. I was working full-time in financial administration at a mid-sized firm. I picked up a second job in the evenings, bookkeeping for 3 small businesses, work I could do from home between 9 and midnight after the day job finished. I did this for 6 years. I did not complain about it. I am not saying this to make myself into something I was not. I complain about things. I complain about traffic and bad coffee and meetings that should have been emails. But I did not complain about working 2 jobs to put my husband through medical school because I had chosen it and I understood what I had chosen, and I believed that what we were building together was worth the cost of building it. I kept records throughout. This was not strategic in the beginning. It was organizational. I am precise about documentation by nature, and I was managing significant finances on a tight budget, and I tracked everything. The way I tracked everything, carefully and completely. Every tuition payment noted by date and amount, every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every rent payment, every transport cost, every textbook, every exam fee. I kept it in a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. In the 4th year of medical school, I did something that was, in retrospect, the most important thing I did in those 8 years. More important than any individual payment or any specific sacrifice or any particular evening I spent doing bookkeeping when I would rather have been sleeping. I called a lawyer, not because anything was wrong, not because I suspected anything. I called a lawyer because I had been doing financial administration for long enough to understand that undocumented contributions to a shared life have a way of becoming invisible when the circumstances change, and I was a precise person who did not like invisible things. The lawyer's name was Patricia Marsh. She was in her 50s, methodical and direct, the kind of solicitor who does not waste words or time. I explained my situation. She listened. She said there was a legal instrument called a cohabitation and financial contribution agreement that could document the nature and extent of my financial contributions to the marriage and establish a framework for how those Contributions would be treated in the event of a significant change in circumstances. I asked her what that meant in practice. She said, "It means that if your husband qualifies as a doctor and decides he no longer wants to be married, you will have a document that a court cannot ignore." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Draft it." Thomas signed it without reading it carefully. I am certain of this because I was there. I sat beside him at Patricia's desk and she explained the document in general terms, and he nodded in the way people nod when they are not really listening because they are tired from a placement and they trust the person sitting next to them and they cannot imagine a version of the future in which any of this matters. He signed it. I filed it in the bottom drawer with everything else. The 8th year was the hardest. Not financially. By the 8th year, I had managed the finances for long enough that the management had become a kind of muscle memory. I knew exactly what we had and what we owed and where every pound had come from and where it had gone. The 8th year was hard in a different way. Thomas was finishing his final placements. He was tired in a way that had become permanent, that had settled into the way he moved, and the way he spoke, and the way he was present in a room, which was increasingly less present than he had been. I attributed this to exhaustion, to the final push of a very long process, to the particular strain of the end of something enormous. I was wrong about what it was. In the 8th year, Thomas became harder to reach. Not impossible. Not completely absent. Just further away in the way that people are further away when they are moving toward something that does not include you and have not yet said so. I noticed. I did not act on the noticing. I kept working. He qualified on a Friday in June. The ceremony was in the morning. His parents came. My parents came. We took photographs outside the hall in the June light, and he was in his formal clothes, and he looked the way a person looks when something they have worked toward for a long time has finally arrived. I stood beside him in the photographs. I was proud of him. I am not performing a virtue I did not feel. I was genuinely proud of him. 8 years of watching someone work towards something leaves you invested in the outcome regardless of what comes after. We went to dinner that evening with the families. It was warm and celebratory and slightly too loud and exactly what the occasion required. I sat across from him and watched him talk and thought about the kitchen table, the night the acceptance letter came and his face doing something open and unguarded and very young. He drove home separately that night. He said he wanted to stop by a colleague's gathering on the way. He came home at midnight. The following Thursday, he served me with divorce papers. I was at my desk when the solicitor's letter arrived. I was doing the bookkeeping for one of the small businesses, the work I had been doing every evening for 6 years. And I opened the letter because it was addressed to me and I did not recognize the firm, name, and I read it standing up. I read it twice. Then I sat down. The letter was formal and precise in the way legal letters are formal and precise, and it stated that Thomas was initiating divorce proceedings and that his legal representation would be in contact regarding the division of assets. I put the letter on the desk beside my laptop. I looked at the screen for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Patricia Marsh. She answered on the second ring. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for exactly the right amount of time. Then she said, "Do you still have the agreement?" "Yes," I said. "And the records? The payment documentation?" "Yes," I said. "All of it." "Good," she said. "Come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything." I brought everything. I sat across Patricia's desk with the folder from the bottom drawer, and she went through it methodically, the way she went through everything. And when she finished, she looked up and her expression was the careful, neutral expression of someone who has just confirmed what they expected to find. She said, "This is comprehensive. 8 years of documented contributions, tuition payments, living costs, secondary income records, everything dated and sourced. Combined with the agreement Thomas signed in year 4, this is a very strong position. His lawyer is arguing I have no claim to his future earnings," I said. "His lawyer," Patricia said, "has not yet seen the agreement." She let that sit for a moment. "The agreement does not claim your entitlement." to his future earnings directly, she said. What it does is establish the nature and extent of your financial contribution to his qualification. It creates a framework within which the court must consider what a fair settlement looks like given that contribution. 8 years of documented support toward a professional qualification that generates a significant income is not invisible in law. It was not invisible when he signed the agreement, and it is not invisible now. When do we present it? I said. At the first hearing, she said. We present the agreement, the documentation, and a calculation of the total financial contribution made over 8 years. We let the numbers speak. The first hearing was 6 weeks later. Thomas's lawyer was a man named Richard Cowell. He was confident in the way lawyers are, confident when they believe they understand the strength of their position. He stood in the hearing room and outlined Thomas's case with the smooth efficiency of someone who has made this argument before and found it effective. He said my contributions to the marriage were those of any supportive spouse. He said there was no legal basis for a claim against Thomas's professional income. He said the division of assets should reflect the current state of the marriage and not historical domestic arrangements. He was halfway through his third point when Patricia placed the agreement on the table. Richard Cowell stopped speaking. He looked at the document. He picked it up. He read it. The hearing room was very quiet. The judge asked to see the document. Patricia provided the court copy. The judge read it. He read it for 4 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall above the door and counted. 4 minutes. Then the judge set it down and looked at Richard Cowell and asked him if he had been aware of this agreement prior to today. Richard Cowell said he had not. The judge asked for a recess. During the recess, Richard Cowell spoke to Thomas in a low, urgent voice in the corridor, and Thomas's face did something I recognized. The open, unguarded expression, the one I had first seen at the kitchen table the night the acceptance letter came. But different this time, stripped of the youth and the hope, and replaced with something that had no name. I wanted to give it. He looked at me once across the corridor. I looked back. I said nothing. The recess lasted 20 minutes. When we returned, Richard Cowell indicated that his client wished to discuss a negotiated settlement. The negotiation took 3 months. Patricia was methodical and thorough and entirely unmoved by the various positions Thomas's legal team adopted and then abandoned as each one encountered the agreement and the documentation and the 8 years of records in the folder from the bottom drawer. The settlement was signed on a Wednesday morning. It reflected, in Patricia's words, the full weight of documented contribution. It was significantly more than Thomas's lawyer had initially proposed. It was, in the language of the settlement document, a fair and equitable recognition of the financial and personal contributions made by Anna Reeves to the professional qualification and establishment of Thomas Reeves over a period of 8 years. I read that sentence 3 times. Fair and equitable recognition. I had kept every receipt for 8 years. I had filed them in a folder. I had called a lawyer in year 4, not because I suspected anything, but because I was precise about documentation, and I did not like invisible things. I signed the settlement on a Wednesday morning, and Patricia shook my hand across the desk, and I thanked her and went outside into the street. It was a Wednesday in October. The light was the particular low gold of autumn in the city, long and horizontal, making everything look older and more certain than it was. I had a meeting at work in 2 hours. A new project, a financial restructuring for a mid-sized client, the kind of work I was good at and had always been good at. I walked to the coffee shop near the office and ordered something and sat at a table by the window and looked at the street. 8 years, 2 jobs, every receipt, a folder in the bottom drawer of a desk in an apartment I had paid for, and a lawyer I had called in year 4 not because anything was wrong, but because I understood that undocumented contributions have a way of becoming invisible, and I was a precise person who did not like invisible things. I finished my coffee. I went to work. I had things to do, and I had, finally and completely and on paper, been seen doing them.